So, how was your Christmas? We were just talking about it, but tell me about it.
Christmas was amazing. My husband and my two daughters, we spent some quality time together, the core four, we like to call it. And, neither one of them are married yet. So it's kind of a interesting phase in our lives. We're empty nesters, but at the same time, we're having fun with our adult children. And it's pretty cool to see. I'm really proud of the women that they've turned into. So it was a good time. And New Year's should be fun too. My husband and I have some time carved out to spend together. We've been married almost 23 years, so we're trying to be intentional about our time. So holidays are a fun time.
That's great. And remind me again, how old are your daughters?
My oldest is 23. My youngest is 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I met a server at the Urban Cellar who was working over vacation that was a friend of your daughter's.
Yeah. They're popular like their mom.
Yes, I get that. Do you have a lot of extended family nearby, or?
My husband has some extended family in the area, in Panora, Iowa. My extended family lives in the Illinois, Chicagoland area. So we get together not that often, but often enough. So, like I said, the core four, we kind of spend most of our time together, and then we kind of travel all over and visit with other people.
Yeah, yeah. My family's huge, so I'm the youngest of 8, and we had probably 40 people over Christmas Eve. Yeah, and that's small. My mom passed away a couple years ago, and that was her big deal. And so we would have 60 plus people every year.
That's crazy.
It's like a mosh pit in here.
Yeah.
It's fun, though.
Super fun.
A lot of fun. So what motivated you to run for office?
Okay, we're going to jump right in. I think I just follow the steps in front of me, but motivation, if we go back to the beginning, I got involved in our school board locally in Carlisle, Iowa, mostly because I didn't like the way some policies were being implemented. And this is pre-COVID. This is like 2018, this is before things were really getting wild on the local scene. And really wanted to prioritize education for my kids. See, my kids went to private school for most of their education, but we transferred into the public school district when they went to high school. And it was just a different experience. And so I started getting more involved at the local level with my school board because I wanted to ask some questions. I ended up being appointed to the school board, and that really opened my eyes to how some things are managed, and saw a lot of opportunity to be part of change. But then, like a lot of things, COVID happened, and that really changed the course of probably everything. It was a blessing really in disguise, but at the time it was extremely challenging. Our school board actually passed no mask mandate the day before the governor did. And I spearheaded that campaign to remove masks from our kids. Obviously it's parental choice. And that was just an eye-opener how political the school board level can be. And that really...
So was that the day before our governor and the Department of Public Health put out the statement?
Correct.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. So I had about 24 hours of extreme hate emails coming through, and that was really fascinating. But, we held strong, and then luckily the whole state had the mask mandate removed. But that really launched my interest in, I guess, education politics.
That's really what got me involved too.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they started, first of all, the masking, but then when they started masking kids during sports, I said, no way, that's not going to happen. And that's when I went to the school board, started sharing all the research, and we actually had a rally at the Capitol.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents woke up at that time, and I think a lot of us met each other. I think I ran into you in several different circles, Oliver, in some cases advocating for those types of things. And so I think it just went hand in hand and kind of snowballed. And now here I sit representative-elect.
Were you involved in the, when we were kind of working on they had put the bill together, the vaccine passport ban bill. I use air quotes because the name was great, but the bill wasn't so great. Were you at the Capitol then too?
I wasn't. I was focused on local school board issues, and still fighting the fight down there. And actually was in the midst of rerunning for school board. So I was hyper focused there and not at the Capitol as of yet.
Right.
My anger level had not reached that point yet. We were still getting some good stuff passed at the local level. So, no, I wasn't there yet.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard, the timeline when I've met people in the movement, the freedom movement, it's always interesting figuring out the timeline.
I think we met at Liberty Champions meeting. That's when I really started going out there and trying to meet other patriots. And that was such a good local group of great people from all different backgrounds. Fighting for election integrity was really the reason for the group, but we all had our own little passions, and it was great to kind of break out into different little groups and fight different little fights. That's when I met you. And so you were doing a podcast and was like, you got to meet Oliver. I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, that's definitely, you look at COVID and pre-COVID, and there's definitely a big change in the trajectory of your life. I mean, that's the thing that got a lot of us together.
Yeah, so thank goodness for COVID, right?
Right.
I think it's been
Yeah, exactly. So what, from school board to, when did you start with Moms for Liberty?
Yeah, so in the midst of rerunning for school board, I was introduced to Moms for Liberty locally in Warren County, and they were helping me with my campaign to a certain extent of just outreach. And so I learned more about them, and I thought, wow, this is a great group. Meanwhile, I lost my reelection. And so then I felt a little bit deflated, but they were there to kind of say, you know what, that's okay. We can still advocate. And so I got really involved with them as it relates to, I don't know if you remember this, but the pornography in schools.
Right.
That was kind of a big deal. And so that was one of the reasons I think, my school board election had so much heat on it, is because I was adamant and unapologetic that these books don't belong in our schools. And to my surprise, people disagreed. And I think it started this process of, okay, we have a lot of work to do, a lot of educating to do, and Moms for Liberty was right there, right by my side. So getting more and more involved, I ended up being the chapter chair, and I've been the chapter chair ever since 2021.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
And it's funny when you say disagreed, because anytime anyone has actually shown the content, like somebody who thinks there's book banning going on, but if they actually see the content, the blatant pornography, the incest, some of those books like Push, where graphic incest, all these things, they don't believe it. They're like, what? They think that there's all these classics being banned or something, when really it's just what's age appropriate, right?
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest message. Like I said, we had a lot of educating to do, and some parents, and making them understand that these books were not appropriate for, like you just said, age appropriate. We don't allow our children to have unfettered access to video games, rated R movies, but for some reason, books was okay, and I just didn't understand that concept. And so it launched this campaign of, we need to get out there and tell parents as much as possible what's going on in their schools, and we need to do whatever we can to make sure those books are not available to young children. So that's when really the journey to the Capitol began, and I prioritized it in my life, trying to go to the Capitol a couple times a week. It was hard with my job, but I, said, this is really important. So really reshaped my life to make that work and to communicate with legislators that this was happening. We have a process in place to appeal these books at a local level, but that process was broken.
It's flawed still.
Yeah, it is. It is. We're getting close, but there's some things that need to be addressed. But in that process of educating parents about these books, we found out that the process for reconsideration was broken, and so that is when we really turned the heat up with legislators and said, we need to make this a priority, and they listened.
I interviewed Terry Patrick about her experience with the reconsideration process, and that was just crazy.
Terry Patrick is an amazing patriot. She was on the front lines of that book battle. She did a lot of great work. She is a dear friend of mine, and I hope it's okay that I announce this, but Terry Patrick is going to be my clerk at the state capitol this coming session.
Yeah, when you told me that, I almost cried. She's amazing. She is so organized and so analytical and so smart.
Yeah,
I mean, you're going to be like miles ahead just having her.
Yeah, we are going to be a force, and I am so excited to have her by my side.
Yep, that's awesome. So the thing I've always thought about this whole reconsideration process and the age-appropriate material is that, maybe the Republicans kind of won that battle, but they certainly lost the narrative. Because everywhere you go, it's like Barnes & Noble, there's a big table, banned books, read banned book month, or any library or Half Price Bookstore had a little scanner code to sign on the door to sign a petition about against banned books. And door knocking, I knocked thousands of doors because I ran too, so I have a new appreciation for what it takes and what you've been through. And you'd hear it occasionally, but, oh, well, I don't like that they're banning books, And can you just kind of, and we were talking about it, can you kind of explain how books aren't really being banned? Why that's a false narrative?
Yeah, so the simple answer is books aren't being banned, period. It was the left's narrative to try to win that battle back because clearly they have an agenda. And they prove themselves that they have an agenda to want these books in children's hands by pushing so hard and saying that this is a book ban. Like I mentioned earlier, we don't allow our children to have unfettered access to everything. I'll tell you a quick story. My daughter she was babysitting, she took one of her teenage friends to a rated R movie. He's 16. She got parental permission to allow to go into the rated R movie. They get there, and the woman says, "Can I see your ID? You have to be, I think, 18."
Right, 17.
Maybe 17, yeah. To get into a rated R movie. And they carded her and said, "Are you old enough to go to this movie?" And she said yes, and gave her ID. And then she said, "I have permission to allow him to come with me." And she was very adamant and almost didn't let them in. So first of all, I want to go find that woman and give her a high five. Thank you for doing such a great job at your job. We don't do that at the school libraries. For some reason, we feel like we can give books that are maybe we would consider rated R to small children without any parental permission. And really, that's what this is about. Do you want to know what your children are reading? And if the answer is yes, then you're on the same side as us with making sure children have appropriate materials at school. So for some reason, this became a us versus them argument, and I'm not really sure why, when really we were all on the same side of we want our children to learn at school, and we want to make sure that the materials they're presented are age appropriate. That is universal, and how it became political really blew my mind. Like I mentioned earlier in my school board election, I became this enemy of book banning, and I couldn't understand it. So we didn't win the narrative. We're still trying to communicate exactly what that is, and it's still out there. But I think I just remain firm and say it's not a book ban.
Well, it's not. And every bookstore, it's the publishers that kind of promote it. Even one of my favorite bookstores in Ankeny, it's Wall-to-Wall Books, owned by a veteran. Great guy, great family. They have their dog there, big German Shepherd. and they've expanded. They have great selection. They had a little bookshelf that said banned books. And I said to the owner, I said, these books aren't, I mean, there was like To Kill a Mockingbird on there and Fahrenheit 451. And I said, those books aren't being banned. He said, oh, well, one of the kids that works here with the publishers had this list and whatever. I said, well, you should probably adjust that because that's really propaganda. And he was very open to it. I mean, great guy. I would recommend anybody go there. And when you turn your books in, you actually get great credit, and it's not like half price books. You can use the credit and get more books, but it's not pennies on the dollar. But anyway, even that store was affected by this narrative of banned books. So,
and maybe that's the point. Maybe it's a way for them to make more money. I mean, it just seems once you dig into it, like you just did, and like that bookstore owner did, you realize, oh, well, maybe this isn't exactly what I thought it was.
Right. So. Right. Back to that moment that you decided to run, and I'm familiar with that. And I'm just curious what it was for you. I mean, because after doing it, I have a new appreciation for our elected officials that had a tough race. I mean, some of them live in areas where it's not so tough, but anybody that had to knock thousands of doors and do all the things that you have to do to get elected, you're working for months and months and months to get elected to a job that doesn't pay anything.
Yeah, you're not really selling it for me.
Right.
I mean, let's be honest, Oliver. I didn't know exactly what I was getting into when I decided to run, which I think was a blessing because it was a lot of work. I don't think I've ever worked that hard in my life. But the moment I decided really came when I knew that there was going to be a vacancy in my district. And I was like, this is such perfect timing. I had been working at the Capitol now 2 years, going down there as a mom, advocating and testifying at bills. And we ran into each other several times, Oliver.
I don't think I testified at a subcommittee hearing meeting that you weren't at.
Okay, well, so yeah, I clearly was there quite a bit.
You were there more than I was.
People were asking me if I was a lobbyist, and I was like, well, I'm a parent and I'm advocating, so I guess, yes, I am. I wasn't getting paid.
Right.
But just having that experience and understanding what it takes, I think I said, you know what, I'm ready to do this. But I will say the credit of having my army behind me, the Moms for Liberty, I was the chapter chair starting in 2021, and all the work we did together, we worked together so much, did so much research and collaborated, and we had each other's backs. And I think I don't know that I would have signed up to do this if I didn't know I had them behind me every step of the way.
There were times there were 5 or 6 of you ladies sitting next to me.
Yeah, and we were happy to see you, Oliver. We had each other's backs, and we worked really, really hard behind the scenes to make sure we were ready for those 2-minute or 3-minute subcommittee speeches. Each of us taking turns figuring out who was going to bring what fact. We wanted to be as effective as possible, and we wanted to make sure that we supported legislators that were trying to fight the good fight as well, because that's a story that I think is untold. These legislators have, they're trying to run these bills that means something, and some of them can be controversial, and they need support too to get that stuff passed. And so we wanted to make sure we were there for them also, but then also make sure that the public could see that we were authentic, real moms that saw that this bill was needed and why it was needed and how it was affecting our children. And I think that's what made our group so successful, because we were able to articulate the need for the legislation. I hope to bring that as a legislator, to just be that authentic, honest leader, because those instincts are really what, following those instincts is really what got Moms for Liberty, myself, and others in the positions they are today. It's because I just worked hard. And you mentioned door knocking. I mean, my friends helped me, but myself, I think I door knocked between the primary and the general election, about 12,000 homes myself, maybe a little bit more. I mean, I kind of lost track at a certain point. I was like, I don't even know what's happening.
And that's insane. I don't think people understand how many hours it takes. I mean, it's say you did 20 doors an hour, 12,000 doors, do the math. I mean, it's a lot of hours, a lot of time.
It was a lot of time. It was a lot of commitment. It was a lot of sacrifice, but not just my own time. It was my family too. We had to adjust the way we lived. We couldn't go on vacation. I was too focused. My husband's like, "Are you making dinner?" I love to cook. And so one of the things I stopped doing was cooking at night because I was door knocking. And so my daughters really stepped up and helped with that. And so it was really a team effort. I think one of the blessings in disguise that came from this experience is how close our family grew together. We were in this together. And when I first told my husband I wanted to run for office, he had his reservations only because he saw the struggle that I went through for school board. It was hard. It was hard on our family. And the personal attacks, no one wants that. So he wasn't overly excited for me, but he knew that it was my calling and it was my duty to step up and do what was right and step into this role and give it my best shot to win.
What type of personal attacks did you face?
All of them. I mean, I don't know that there's a name that I haven't been called. And so it's actually pretty shocking. But now I think, well, if I'm not getting called those names, maybe then I'm not quite on target. And that's too bad in politics, but that's just really the game. So I want to be clear. I'm not naive to how politics works, and I'm ready for those attacks. And that's why I say I'll be unapologetic for my beliefs and ready to take a stand and stand for truth. I'll do that because I've seen what the attacks have produced. They just can't. They don't affect me.
What was the dumbest one or the silliest one? Did they make fun of you for being a Christian or something?
Well, I think the one funny one. Okay, so I told you that I had turned my life upside down, and I had left my job, and I was doing some things, just having fun. So I was working at one of my favorite stores in the mall, and someone called me a BITCH that works at the mall. And I just thought to myself, that's just rude. Like, there's a lot of really hardworking Iowans that work here, and like that's just straight up rude. So
right.
The attacks are just, they're ridiculous. They don't get anywhere. Nobody's really
I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it.
And it's like, okay, so why do you think that? Because I disagree? Because you want these books in school? What exactly is the problem? And we never have a dialogue.
No.
And so that's unfortunate because I'm open to that dialogue. Some people have brought their concerns to me and said, I don't like that you support school choice, and so then we talk about that. But those are people that are willing to have that dialogue without yelling or name calling. And
I met a lot of those people door knocking.
Yeah.
That were willing to talk about things. And that's always refreshing.
Yeah, it is. And I think when you show up to their doorstep and say, hey, it's more personal for them. And so maybe they feel like they can't open up and say, well, while you're here, let me share this. I don't know. It's a really fascinating experience to build those relationships. It is.
How many doors did it take for you to start getting comfortable with it?
Like one. I don't know. It doesn't bother me at all. I love it. I love going to people's stores.
I love it too, but it took me about 100 doors because it was like, you don't know what you're going to expect. Yeah. You got the little blue dots and the yellow dots and the red dots and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to talk to this hard Democrat, and then I found that I had some really great conversations with Democrats and independents and Republicans, and that really we were like 80% right down the middle. It was just misconceptions, miscommunications, or purposeful miscommunications by the media and things like that. But I found that any one-on-one conversation could go mostly pretty well.
I think just not expecting anything, just walking into it and say, here we go. Hold on. And there are people too, and I'm here and we're running for office and I want to represent you and let's talk.
No matter who they are.
Yeah. Because, and then, sometimes they're like, get off my property. I'm like, okay, well, have a great day and walk off. And then others are like, come in and have dinner with us. So
are you thirsty? Here's some water.
Yeah. So I think you just have to be willing to let things roll off your shoulders and just go with the flow. And, I will say, and maybe you experienced this too, Oliver, but I have found some really amazing friends door knocking. We've welcomed them to our family. They've come over for dinner. There's just so many friends that I've made that I would never have known unless I would have knocked on the door and got to know them. And maybe I spent too much time with people at doors. People like, it's 2 minutes per door, whatever the time. I just thought, if people are willing to talk, then let me learn from their experience.
Right.
That's going to be more valuable than anything. And so I did take the time, and I met some really, really great people that I still keep in touch with, and they're my friends, and I can go to their house anytime and we can hang out. And so that's just the coolest thing out of all of this.
It is. It's amazing, the people you meet and the concerns they have that maybe you weren't aware of.
Yeah.
Like water quality.
Yeah.
Or like the cancer rates in Iowa, or we're like one of the highest puppy mill states.
Yeah.
All these issues that people have, you're like, whoa, I better write that down and take that to the Capitol with me when I go.
Yeah. It's your constituents, the people in your area, they're the ones that make you successful. They're the resources you need to say, hey, this is a problem. Let's look into it. And I always would say, let me write, like you just said, write your name down. Can I reach out to you later? Would you be willing to come to the Capitol, or can I call you? Can we talk more about this to get to the bottom of the issue? That's really where the best solutions come from, or we the people, bringing those issues to the forefront, not just legislators or leadership saying, these are the problems that we decided we're going to solve this year, but more listening to what's happening on the ground. And so as close as you can stay to that, I think is the best. That's my hope, at least.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What was the biggest challenge you faced while you were running?
I think, there were so many. The biggest challenge, I think, is just living up to everyone's expectations and not disappointing them. They really wanted me to win. And so maybe that's why I door knocked so much. I didn't want to give up one day of door knocking because I didn't want to lose by a small margin. I wanted to win because there were so many people that were behind me, supporting me financially, and in friendships and all of those things. I think it was just myself getting past not wanting to disappoint others. But
what was the biggest, or was it the primary, the bigger challenge, or the general election?
They both had their own challenges. The primary was extremely challenging only because I was up against someone that had experience in the legislators before. However, they had just moved to that area, so not really a lot of people knew them, and a lot of people knew me. So it was a really interesting experience, but it made me make sure that I stay focused, stay on message, work hard, put your head down, work hard. Don't worry about anyone else's campaign but yours, and connect with people. And that's ultimately why I won. The general election was different because there couldn't have been any more clearer distinctions between myself and my opponent. That was not the case in the primary, right? The primary was between two Republicans. And so, well, what's the difference between you two, right? That was always the question. I could say that I'm cooler, right? So that was a big difference. But in the general election, it was, we have completely opposite viewpoints on things. And so, it was really up to the voters. What do they want, right?
How hard did your opponent work?
I don't really know. I can't speak for him.
Well, I watched the forum, and that was interesting. I know you said you didn't get the questions ahead of time. Well, it seemed like he did, because he would just turn to a page in his book and he looked down the whole time, and he would read in a monotone voice his answer.
Yeah.
And there couldn't have been a bigger distinction between you two in that forum.
I prepared myself as much as possible. Like I said, I don't want to disappoint my supporters. It was more about them listening to the persons that's going to represent them at that forum than it was about having, fancy talking points against your opponent. It was really about making sure that the expectations of the people in the audience knew what they were going to get if they voted for me. But yeah, you were right. Watching it back, my opponent did just read from a script, I guess.
Right.
So you have to speculate. Did he have the questions ahead of time? It doesn't matter. We know our stuff, and we spoke from our heart, and we spoke truth. So regardless, maybe not every single answer had every single question was answered perfectly. I mean, you only have 90 seconds, right? But we did the best we could, and that's all you can do.
What were when you were door knocking and on your material and whatnot, were there like a top 3 issues or something?
Yeah, I just pointed out, I'm pro-life, pro-family, pro-Second Amendment, and I'm a constitutionalist. And that kind of was the umbrella messaging. But once we got into conversations, there was a few bullet points on there on education reform. Let's be honest, education reform is going to be where I focus most of my time. It's what I love. It's what I have the most experience in. And I am the House Vice Chair of Education, which is
that's a huge deal.
Such a huge deal. And so I'm so excited. And again, I feel the pressure of making sure I deliver on as much as I can, because people are looking to me for that leadership. But that was what was on my card. And then we would have conversations about education.
So what are the education priorities this session? I know you've been to caucus. Mm-hmm. You're getting your feet wet, learning, having some orientation and discussions and everything. What do you feel like the biggest things will be in education that you'll accomplish or work on?
Full caucus Republican standpoint, I think and even possibly from the governor, I think technology and cell phones will be addressed at some in schools at some level. I don't know what that means, what it will look like. That's been spoken about, expanding the voluntary preschool program. That's been spoken about, and then school safety. So those are big topics, right? So what do those exactly mean? I don't know for sure. I mean, I know what my priorities are within that, and I've talked to others.
Well, what do you think about kids not being able to have access at all? There are different levels of that. No access during class, or just rules that prohibit or say, hey, you're not to use your
cell
phone during class.
Yeah. I mean, the cell phone issue is sensitive. So this is where I fall philosophically. I don't know that we need a ban statewide where the state comes in and says, this is against the law to have your cell phone in school. Really, it needs to be locally dictated. And I think a lot of school districts are implementing those policies.
You can move that closer a little bit if you want.
Sorry, thank you.
Oh, you're good.
I think that there are school districts that are prioritizing cell phone policies. What that looks like is they have to stay in their lockers, or they have to stay in their backpack. Now, remember, some schools still don't have lockers after COVID. We still don't even have that yet. So, and speaking with my superintendents, but I think locally that can be handled. I look at it more philosophically from a higher level and say, how is technology affecting learning? And so I kind of look at it a little bit differently and say, are we overloading kids with technology that they're unable to process information in ways that has worked in the past? We're not writing on a piece of paper anymore. Are we losing some of those core skills that we need for these kids to be successful? Now, we know in a workplace we use our phones and computers all of the time. But when children are learning in those learning environments, what's the best way for them to learn? That's the piece that I want to look more into when it comes to this whole cell phone technology issue.
Well, Waukee just went to iPads for learning. I feel like that's a challenge.
I think we went through this phase of what school districts can allow one-on-one technology. That's going to be the best school district, and I want to get my child to that school district. And now I think we're starting to double back and say, maybe that's not the best, because screen time, we know we don't want our kids on their cell phones playing video games and looking at Instagram and all of those things. But yet we're going to give them an iPad to learn every second. They're not going to be able to stay focused. They're going to be looking at other things. So I think it's a bigger, broader topic. I do know that there are some parents asking for a pathway that does not include any technology in their child's education. So what does that mean exactly? So, I don't know that we'll get that accomplished this session or in 5 years. I don't know, but that the conversation needs to start happening. And how do kids learn best? Is technology really as good as we think it is?
And personally, I know that I love a textbook. I like the feel of the pages. I like to be able to mark the pages and flip ahead or flip back. But I'm 52 years old. I'm not a kid that grew up on gadgets. We had the rotary phone. And when it comes to cell phones, we had a big discussion about this. I have a men's group, Kairos Nexus, and we meet once a month with legislators. And we were meeting with Representative Andrews and Representative Gelbach. And, they were talking about the legislative session. And I had originally, thought, we just shouldn't have cell phones at school. But then in talking to parents, they wanted their kids to be able to contact them if they needed to, or if there were an emergency, or if there was something that went on, and so I've thought about it as well. And I think as a teacher or a school, how hard would it be to say, hey, you can't have your cell phone during class. It has to be in your backpack. And if I catch you with it, that's 1 strike, 3 strikes. Or if I catch you with it, it goes up in the pocket at the front of the class until class is over. And, I think Representative Gelbach's comment was, sometimes the superintendents want us to be the bad guys and pass the law instead of just, doing it themselves.
And he's not wrong. And that's part of it as well. I think we need to remember that we do have common sense.
Right.
We can't legislate that. Some people are going to have to lead the way on that. And like I said, there are a few schools that have those policies in place with cell phones, but then it's how are we policing that as well?
Right.
I mean, how as legislators are we going to police if a school district is, taking cell phones away? It's an interesting topic. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion about it. And I was like you, Oliver. I was like, get the cell phones out. And then I thought, well, wait a minute.
How do you feel when you leave your cell phone at home?
Right.
And you've left? Just think of how kids would feel.
Right.
Yes, we want to try to minimize that and say, hey, we don't need to be. But I tell you, my phone's right here. I mean,
But remember, if we take the cell phone away, you just said Waukee is implementing and everyone gets an iPad. We're just transferring our communication skills from one device to another. And that's why the whole technology discussion needs to happen for real. If we want to have this discussion, let's have this discussion.
Yeah. So what statistically do you remember, like, where we're at now versus where we used to be ranked? I mean, I know that we've really dropped in our rankings in Iowa when it comes to...
Yeah, I believe we're ranked 31, I think, out of the states is the last stat we look. And it depends on what study you look at. But clearly we're clearly not number one, right?
Right.
So there is work to do. And, there's no reason why we can't look at some of these other states and say, why are you guys doing such a good job? What do we need to do? We invest over 56% of our state budget in education. That includes higher education as well. And so we're investing a lot of money in education, and we need to be getting better results. That's really what parents are saying. Hey, I want a better return on investment for what we're paying for. So, that's where I think school choice comes into the mix too, and creating a little bit of competition, but also choices for parents so they can customize their child's education in different ways so the outcomes are better. Because at the end of the day, this is about what children are learning, not necessarily how we're ranked or how much money we spend in public schools or how much our teachers make. It's more about what are the outcomes of these children? Are we providing education that fits each child?
Right. And when you mention school choice and ESAs, I heard a lot at the doors. You can imagine where I live, public money for public schools. And there's this idea that we're destroying our public school system by allowing people to make a choice with their dollars or their tax dollars. How has that affected our schools? Mm-hmm. Is that a misconception?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, we spent the ESA's program in the state of Iowa is 2.7% of the education budget. out of the 56. So it's, the amount we're spending on that program is so small compared to the overall budget. But again, this isn't about money. This is about outcomes. I also heard that at the doors, and I would challenge back and say, do you care more about the teachers' jobs, or do you care about if the child is learning? Where is the priority? And I think that's where we have a misstep here in our messaging. We need to remember what our priority is. And the reality is kids, not all kids learn the same. They don't learn in the same environments. I mean, you have boys that are maybe rambunctious and can't sit still. That doesn't mean that they need to be medicated. That just means they need an environment where they can move around more and be outside and learn. And that's how they learn. And so I think it's this education revival, what I like to call an education revival, where we start to think about education a little bit different, where we actually customize it to the child. We're seeing lots of different kinds of school models open across the state of Iowa that are responding to that need. Parents are recognizing that their child learns differently, and they're finding an environment that best fits. So I push back on the premise that ESA program is somehow destroying public schools. I think in the end, it's going to make public schools better, and they're going to continue to be part of the equation, and it's going to be a win-win for all of us.
I think I heard someone say that the superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools said, "Oh, I guess we're going to have to work harder now," or something. Or, it's a competition is always good, and 2.7% isn't really competition, but it does provide someone who lives in an area where maybe they'd like to come out to maybe somebody that lives in an urban area and doesn't feel like their kid is getting the education they need, but they can't afford to go to a private school because of their income and their situation. Well, that provides them a pathway for equal opportunity. And that's kind of what, I was kind of surprised, because I thought, well, at some of the pushback on that, because I thought, well, don't you want to give these other kids equal opportunity if their parents want that?
I mean, education choice is the definition of freedom. I don't know why why there's people pushing against that. So you'll see that from me as a legislator, always just talking about ESAs and ESA expansion, how we can make the program better. And because at the end of the day, as I said before, it's about the outcomes of what these children are learning, and they can be the best they can be. We need to equip them with knowledge, with education. I mean, it's such a basic fundamental thing, and we have politicized it to the point that it's just about money.
Yeah.
I think I even said to someone, I'm like, okay, if I give you $10 million, is that going to help with your school and making all the kids learn more? No, it's not. It's not about the money. So when people talk to me about, well, we just need more funding, I personally shut down and say, okay, well, then you're not serious about problem solving if it's just about money.
Right. I mean, if it's 56% of our budget, and it's really up to the school board to figure out, okay, how can we balance things and manage the budget and create more opportunities in that way. What about the AEA issues, the AEA bill? I heard about that too at the doors, people concerned about us messing with the AEA system.
Yeah, I mean, I did hear that too. I mean, my simple answer to them is, well, number one, I didn't work on the bill. But number two, introducing accountability into a system that didn't have it, I think that's where people were having pushback from. This is taxpayer dollars also, and don't we want accountability for our taxpayers? And this is after we get off the heels of a conversation of, you're going to give all this money to private schools that have no accountability, and then they're mad that we're asking for accountability with the AEAs. We can't have both things.
Aren't we one of the only states that has a group that has a monopoly on those services? Yeah,
our state is uniquely structured with the AEA system. I haven't been hearing too much pushback now. I think now it's the kind of the time where it's like, okay, tell us, the school districts are like, hey, what are you hearing? What are you feeling? Tell us. Because I don't think that the discussion's done with AEAs. Everyone wants the special education to be the best it can.
Right.
No one doesn't want that. And so we just, like I said, if we're serious about problem solving, stop talking about the money and let's actually look at the issue and work through it so we can find the best possible solutions for these kids.
I think they did a good job with that discussion. Early on last session, I interviewed Steve Holt, Representative Holt, and he was not for the bill. But then they brought in superintendents, they brought in people from the AEA, they had these great conversations, and they completely started from scratch and rewrote it. Then by the end of the session, he was completely on board with it.
Yeah.
So the process did work, and they did, and I think what they did was pretty minimal, and it's graduated. But they didn't they provide teachers' raises?
Yeah.
And part of the problem is, some of the people that actually work on the ground, their pay is so little, and the people at the top, the administrators, are making so much money, it's ridiculous.
Right. Yeah, so we'll continue to watch that. I do know that legislators were happier with the outcome towards the end of the session. I think it's just more about the messaging to people at the doors and what's actually going to happen because they're scared. Am I going to lose my job?
Right.
Are my services going to be gone? I think that's really where people were worried about. And, we're just going to have to watch and see what happens.
So I remember testifying, one of the bills we passed, I think it was the session before last, was the bill that protected our minors from mutilation and medicalization. So, this gender affirming care that they flip on its head and call something that it's not. And, kids being given cross-sex hormones and top surgery, which is breast removal and mutilation, basically. And at that subcommittee hearing meeting, I'm sure you were there.
I was.
I testified after an OB that had been performing these Frankensteinian surgeries on kids. And before, this radical trans individual who, guy in a dress, you all just want to kill me, slams his hand on the table and pops an estrogen pill at the end of his testimony. So now this person has been elected to the Iowa House. So how do you deal with that? I mean, what's the bathroom situation there?
Yeah, good question. I will tell you that I am concerned. I wasn't thrilled that he won his election, and he will be serving alongside the other House representatives this coming session. Bathroom situation, I mean, I don't know what the plan is, but I will be clear and say I will not be sharing a bathroom with a man. And I don't expect that any other woman or minor, there's lots of minors and visitors that come to our building that will have to be forced to share a bathroom with a man. That's not acceptable in my mind. And so I think leadership will be doing something to address that. I've made my line in the sand there. And yes, I was at that subcommittee, so people know where I stand on that, Oliver. And along with the bathroom bill for school children, you have to use the bathroom you were assigned by sex. That was a bill
that was one of the most hate-filled rooms.
It was.
When I was trying to get in the room, because Sherilyn Westridge had contacted me the night before, and we did a short 4-minute little podcast, like snippet, to send out to all our members. And so I'm trying to get in the room, and it's so crowded. People aren't letting me in, and some guy told me to F off. And I'm just trying to get in so that I can testify. And, it's funny how much media shows up for those kind of bills. And interestingly enough, we passed that law K through 12, protecting our bathrooms. And really, we're protecting everybody, but mostly it's our young women, in my opinion. And I have had conversations with young women who are in college that have experienced those issues. So, we had, I did an interview with a young woman and her mother, and she ended up leaving her school because they were letting a young man use her bathroom and shower and locker room. And so she didn't know this person you couldn't decide from week to week which gender they were. So that's one of the challenges is there's no medical diagnosis. There's no, it's all, I self-identify as X. So what, do you know what the legislature might do to help alleviate the problem beyond K through 12? I know that was a long.
So expanding it to
colleges, to
public universities, public bathrooms.
Right, right.
I do know that there is some legislation that was drafted to come out to address that issue. I certainly would support it. We have an uphill battle with this topic, and we just need to remain strong and stand firm that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and there's nothing in between, and be unapologetic about that fact, because it is a fact.
Right.
So
I think so many more people are speaking out against it now that it's become a lot more acceptable to just be able to say, hey, look, this is the truth. This is like gravity. We're not going to give in to your delusion.
Yeah, I think the left has just pushed this radical idea and ideology down our throats, and we are saying no. This is not what's happening. So I'm sure there will be discussions this coming session. So we'll wait and see what that brings.
Yes, we will. You're the vice chair of the education committee. Are there any other committees that you're serving on?
Yeah, I'll be on judiciary.
Oh, great. With Representative Holt.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Can't wait to serve with him. He's a great patriot. And then I will also be part of agriculture and education appropriations.
Okay. So the appropriations committee, what does that do?
That's the purse strings.
Right.
So we'll be working on the money factor.
Budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who chairs that?
Austin Harris, Representative Austin Harris.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So I think that we have 67 Republicans. It's a big majority. It's a super majority, right?
Right.
So I am just really looking forward to working with all of my colleagues on good policy governance, and want to be part of the team, but also bring a unique piece of my bold leadership to the table, and making sure, the people that elected me know who I am. And so being true to that and serving and being honest and having integrity. I'm just really looking forward to get to work, honestly, and start submitting bills and working on bills. It's going to be a wild ride. I know during your campaign, Oliver, I was just really rooting for you because I wanted to serve alongside you at the Capitol, since we've been in so many subcommittees together.
Right.
But you did come and speak during my campaign on gender ideology.
Yes.
And I will tell you, I got a lot of compliments on that session that we held with Pizza and Politics, and so many people learned from my campaign trail. I really, really wanted to, when I was running during my primary, I wanted to educate the community on issues that were happening and have them take a deep dive on what was going on. And gender ideology was one of them, and it was very well attended because people had questions. What does this mean? What is this about? And you did a really great job in laying that out for them. And so many people thanked me and said, thank you for helping the community learn more about this issue.
Well, I appreciate that. It's, I have 3 daughters, so it's actually your former boss, right? Walt.
Yes.
Introduced me to that at a Liberty Champions meeting. He talked about Abigail Schreier's book, it was, what was the name of her book?
Irreversible Damage.
Irreversible Damage. I read that book. Actually, after that meeting, I went and mowed my lawn, and I downloaded it on Audible. And I listened to it, and I was just floored at the amount of damage that's been done to our young women. And then I ordered the book. And then, as you can see, if you look over there, I've got Lost in Transnation, Trans, Bad Therapy. I just got a book from Gays Against Groomer called The Gender Trap, which is really interesting because that was founded by gay people, the LGB part of that community that is against the TQ plus IA, whatever, taking over their movement and harming children. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, the co-founder of that group was at a Monster Liberty Summit. We got to meet with her and talk with her, and she's a great young woman, does some good work on advocacy, but trying to protect our youth from all different sorts of, that like you said, the gender trap.
They have some good resources.
They do.
On their website. So what's next? Tell me about, anytime I talk to legislators, they say when they're a freshman, it's like drinking from a fire hose. The amount of information, the amount of things you're learning about the process of being a legislator. How has that been?
It's like drinking from a fire hose. I love to process lots of information. It's been great to learn kind of the ins and outs on how things work. Orientation was a couple weeks ago with the freshmen. We learned, just like I said, the ins and outs of the process. I'll be honest, Oliver, I didn't learn that much. I kind of know a lot what's going on, but it's interesting just to see how the inner workings will happen. And, you have to submit a bill and all the things, all the pieces with that. There is a lot to manage. But I have a great clerk, as I mentioned earlier, Terry Patrick. She will be my rock star sidekick. And I think having her partnership there will help me sort through the things that need to be done. Once the session starts, we'll have lots of bills to read and research and making sure we know exactly what's happening. And then also communicating with our constituents so they know what's going on. I think that's the piece that we can't forget. They got us here. They need to understand what's happening at the Capitol often. They need to also partner with us in crafting good legislation. How will it affect their lives? And so that will be a big part of what I prioritize and making sure I continue to communicate with them and start maybe creating some monthly events where they can come and learn, especially on sensitive topics like gender or any of those things that we will be tackling as a caucus. And so they can understand those issues deeply. The AEA would have been a great example. Let's bring in some parents that deal with the AEA on a regular basis and get their perspective so we can not make up our mind right now and dig our heels in the sand, but actually learn about some of the challenges that we face. So it is drinking like a fire hose. I love it. I can't wait to get started. I have lots and lots of priorities. I can't wait to get working on education. Can't wait to dig into the standards. We have our grading system is broken. How do we elevate what these kids are learning? There's just so much to do.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate what you said about educating people. And that's kind of what I've tried to do is, be kind of a bridge between legislators and normal people, because normal people, they're grocery shopping, they're coaching their kids' football team or basketball team, they're trying to work and run their business and do everything else. And so if we can help them to understand, okay, here's what's going on at the Capitol in short snippets, or, whether it's an article or a call to action or an event or whatever else, and help them get involved, because a lot of people want to be involved. They just don't know how to.
Yeah.
They want to they know what's going on nationally because they're watching the news and they're on X, and a lot of people know more about things going on at the national level than I do, because I don't watch TV. I don't watch the news. I'll jump on X. I'm trying to figure that out. It's strange to me, but I'll get it. But to be able to have conversations with you is important, because people will listen to this, and I'll send it to my mailing list, and they'll get to know, okay, who is Representative Samantha Fett. And I tell you, there's no better. I was so happy that you won, and you're going to be such a force for good on that committee. I mean, it's one thing to be invited to talk to the committee, but it's another thing to be on the committee. I think it's going to be amazing.
It's such a, it's so surreal. Joshua 1:9 teaches us to be bold and courageous. And I have run that verse through my head over and over during my campaign, and it certainly won't stop now that I'm vice chair of education. And I want to make sure that I do the best I can. I'm not going to stop being bold because our children depend on us. So that's where my passion lies, and that's where my instincts need to stay intact so I can make sure I lead the best I can. So.
Well, I think that's a great place to end this interview today, or conversation, I should say. Do you have a newsletter? Where can people find you?
Yeah, right now, if you go to my Facebook page, Fett for House, spelled out, you'll see some updates there and a way to sign up for my weekly newsletter that will be coming out as soon as session starts. I'm trying to come up with a clever name for it. Because I like to be extra. So if you have any good ideas, let me know. Send them my way. But that will be coming up as soon as session starts. We'll be updating people often.
I still think you should dress like Boba Fett.
Yeah.
You see the Mandalorian there?
I do. I was looking at it in the corner of my eye during this.
You'd look great in that Boba Fett armor.
Yeah, I'm trying to do a play on that. Good thing we're Star Wars fans. But
old Star Wars.
Exactly. Old Star Wars.
All right. Well, thanks so much. You have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you. And God bless you.
Thank you, Oliver.